Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Iris and today I'll show you the process of painting a watercolor Celtic stag. I was inspired of painting a stag from a statue that I saw in a park when I was traveling in Nantes, a city in the northwest of France. I wanted to combine this beautiful animal with a Celtic design inspired from the Book of Kells. The Book of Kells is an illuminated manuscript gospel book. This book is famous for its text accompanied by many full-page miniature illustrations and Celtic knots, combining intricate detail with bold and energetic compositions. And what are Celtic knots, you may ask? Well, Celtic knots are a variety of stylized graphical representations of knots used for decoration inspired by elements found in nature. They are extensively used in the Celtic style of insular art. My design was heavily inspired by a combination of all those elements. I drew a stag in the middle of a forest, surrounded by trees with knotted branches. However, drawing all those branches got confusing after a while, so I used color markers on my original drawing to differentiate the different layers so it would be easier when transferring my drawing onto the watercolor paper with my light box. Note that I used whichever color I found on the spot, so the colors are really ugly, but it doesn't matter as this is a draft. Now onto the painting. I started inking the Celtic knot surrounding the stag with Sennelier's ink, walnut stain color. I thought it was a regular pigment-based permanent ink which does not move when you add water. However, this was not the case. This ink is not indelible. This became a problem as you will see later. This is what happens when one does not test supplies thoroughly. Luckily, I did not ink the whole drawing with it. Otherwise, it would have been a big mess once I started the watercolor portion of the painting. The portions that I inked with this specific brand were not portions that I was planning to apply large amounts of water. It's a good thing that I used another brand for inking the stag and all the background trees. I am not saying Sennelier's brand is bad, but it is not adapted to what I wanted. I first inked with a small inking pen that is usually good for drawing. However, the whole process was very difficult as the ink was not flowing properly. It felt like it was drying quickly and was getting stuck on the inking pen. When inking the stag and the trees, I switched to a bigger inking pen, which was a good move. This one was a lot smoother and easier to draw with. And yeah, it's a pity that I did all those details with the other one. But that's how things are. You learn from your mistakes. I haven't inked in so long that I actually forgot about those details. The second brand I used is from Rohrer und Klinger, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's the first ink I buy from this brand. It was quite expensive, but at least this one was water resistant, which was what I wanted. The color I used is burnt sienna. When starting the watercolor portion of my painting, I first applied water on the whole area, but that's when I realized that my ink was not water resistant, and as you can see, it got quite messy around the tree trunk and on the edge as well. On the tree trunk, it was not a big deal because I knew I was going to paint it brown, but I was still upset because my painting looked kind of dirty from the start. With the watercolor, I applied a yellow base as an underpainting for the forest scene. For the Celtic knot, I used indigo. I lost the footage of this part of the painting though, so I cannot show you more. As a next step, I started painting the background of the forest scene, the trees behind the stag. I applied terre verte color from Holbein for all the background trees as a base and burnt sienna just for the tree in the foreground. Once the base was dry, I applied the same burnt sienna that I used in the front tree on top of the layer of terre verte of the background trees. This helped to blend them better with the background and make them look like they are receding. I wanted to make them look further away. With this first layer, I already started working some type of texture on the trees using the burnt sienna color. I went back working on the foreground tree, deepening the colors used. I took burnt sienna and I mixed it with ultramarine blue to have this deeper color. I worked on all the crevices of the tree, and I went increasing the amount of ultramarine blue in the mix as time went on to have a darker shade as I was working on those parts. I also worked on adding some type of texture all around the surface of the tree trunk because it's the tree that is closest to the viewer, so it should have more details. Then I used indigo on the background trees because I wanted to give a green-blue atmosphere as they are receding in the distance. I thought that making them more bluish than the front tree would help blend them in the background. You can see that for the foremost trees, I directly applied an indigo layer on top of the green layer and added just a hint of burnt sienna to differentiate them from the middle ground and the foreground. After that, I went on painting the stag. For the stag, I used Payne's gray, which is a bluish gray, because I wanted the whole painting to have this dichotomy between warm and cool tones. I did not paint the stag in a typical brown color because it would just blend too much with the background. I mostly painted the stag with several layers of Payne's gray and added a tiny bit of brown or burnt sienna in some places to tie it with the overall scene. It's something you're going to see throughout the whole painting process as I reuse the same colors but in different amounts all around the painting. For example, you can see that I did use indigo in the foreground trees, but I used a lot more burnt sienna and a mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue on this tree. Reusing the same colors but in different amounts all around the painting helps homogenize the piece and provides color harmony. Now I added Gamboge yellow as a light that comes from the background and that hits the trees. I wanted to give this type of eerie feeling to the whole piece. For the transitions, I added a little bit of rose madder, genuine, because it gives a bit more nuance and richness to the colors, and it makes them more vibrant. At this point, I took out my Kuretake Gamsai Tambi Starry palette that I just got. I wanted to try it so bad. I chose number 902 red gold to do the details of the Celtic knot. This was the most boring part. Don't get me wrong, it's very satisfying because the gold is beautiful, but it's very repetitive. I had to do it all around and then also paint the inner and outer parts of the circle, which was long. I did cut a lot of footage right there because otherwise we would have been here forever. I then started working on the second smaller circle. When I'm looking at the footage, it was so nice at this stage, and I messed it up later on because I did not pretest my colors. That's a part of the painting that I'm not really proud of, but yeah, I made it work. To finish the details of the Celtic knot, I used Winsor and Newton silver ink. I did not use the silver of the Kuretake Gamsai Tambi palette because the silver is not as rich as the Winsor and Newton silver. It's quite difficult to see it right here in the footage because it's difficult to see the difference between the white parts and the silver ones, but I can tell you in real life, you really see the difference. And to finish up, I retook my Gamsai Tambi palette and used number 905 light gold, which is a color that is in between gold and silver, and I did the last details just to enhance the eeriness of the painting and provide a more magical kind of lighting. You can see right here a little bit when I move the painting. With the lighting, you can see that it shines. So, this is the final piece. It's not my favorite, although I did have fun to paint the stag, but I'm a bit disappointed with my Celtic knot. I do like the colors though. Also, I want to add that I really enjoyed using the Holbein watercolors that I recently got for free. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me. If you did, let me know by liking this video. And if you want to see more of my creations, subscribe. I wish you a nice day, night, whatever the time you're watching this, if you're watching it until the end. Thank you for watching.